I'm reading a new book now, as you can probably tell by the title. But I have to tell you first how I heard about this book. So I follow Carrie from Carrie Can Read. Also, I follow her on Instagram. So on Instagram, I think I want to say like a week ago, she posted a reaction to reading a book and then tagged the name of the book. And I was like, okay, sounds good. I'm in the mood to have the same reaction. So I typed in the hashtagged title onto Goodreads, and it turns out it was the third book to this series. I don't know what the series is called, but the first book is called Once Upon a Broken Heart. So yeah, I'm reading this book at the moment. I'm only up to chapter 10, but I kind of wanted to do a reading vlog because if I want to finish the series, which I do, I kind of want to remember everything that happens in all the books. Let me first explain to you the synopsis of this book. The back, I can't read white font on like pink background, so I'm gonna go on Goodreads and I'll read the synopsis for you there. For as long as she can remember, Evangeline Fox has believed in true love and happy endings, until she learns that the love of her life will marry another. Desperate to stop the wedding and to heal her wounded heart, Evangeline makes a deal with the charismatic but wicked Prince of Hearts in exchange for his help. He asks for 3 kisses to be given at the time and place of his choosing. But after Evangeline's first promised kiss, she learns that bargaining with an immortal is a dangerous game, and the Prince of Hearts wants far more from her than she'd pledged. He has plans for Evangeline, plans that will either end in the greatest happily ever after or the most excruciating tragedy. Sorry, I hate reading something out loud because my eyes don't focus on words and they jump too often. Anyway, yeah, so that is the synopsis. I'm up to chapter 10, so I'll just recap what I've read so far. So in the beginning of the book, she goes to the churches, this temple for the Prince of Hearts. We learn that there are these things called fates in this world, and they're basically like deities. So she goes there and then she prays to the Prince of Hearts, and the Prince of Hearts is like, basically tells her straight up, like, you know, if he did love you, he would have married you, end of story. And she doesn't believe that, because here's the thing with Evangeline, she's really young. We learn that she's like 17, and she really believes and has this like naive, hopeful sort of spirit. She believes in fairy tales. She believes that her story will end in happily ever after, because like there's a lot of stuff that's happened to her. So her dad owns these shops. There's this one shop that her dad owns, and it's called the Oddities, Whimsies and Other Curiosities or something like that, and like just weird stuff in there. And so her dad has recently passed away. Her mum has also previously passed away, so she's kind of an orphan. She has a stepmother who doesn't really like her very much. She has a stepsister who she's not really close with. Now, the guy that she was in love with, Luke, they've sort of been, I guess, seeing each other kind of thing. And when they were about to tell everyone that they were like together and were gonna get married and stuff like that, after her dad has passed away, he comes out and he and announces that he's going to marry her stepsister. And then straight after that, she's like in shock, and he doesn't want to talk to her. And also she tries to tell her stepsister, but every time she tries to tell her, she can't really get the words out. So she's convinced that someone has cursed. She's convinced that her stepmother has cursed Luke, the guy that she's in love with, to not marry her. Basically, that's kind of her way of rationalizing why she's not getting her happily ever after with her true love. And the writing style I really like. It's very whimsical. It's very this is the kind of fantasy that I think I kind of enjoy, but it has to be there has to be levels of it. So what I mean by that is this fantasy writing style is very no explanation. So like in the beginning, the very first line, it's like, oh, the bell knew that the man that was going to come into the store is bad news for the woman working there, and the bell rang as a warning, but the person didn't realize that it was a warning, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like okay, is the bell like an actual living thing that is actually like, you know, has thought and is ringing to warn the person, or is this like a kind of metaphor kind of thing? It's like that kind of writing style, which I really like. I don't enjoy fantasies that have a lot of like rules in the very beginning, because I find that to be way too like, it almost kind of has those kind of fantasy to me feel more scientific. I don't really enjoy those kind of scientific kind of fantasies with a lot of rules and a lot of magic systems and things like that. I like it when it's just like, yeah, this is just a thing that happens. So she makes a deal with the Prince of Hearts, his name is Jax, in order to stop the wedding. But then she also says like, I also don't kill anyone because I don't want anyone to die at this wedding. I just want you to stop it. So he's like, okay, sure, I'll do that, but you owe me 3 kisses. And he gives her these broken heart scars on her wrist, I think, on the inside of her wrist or something. And then she's like, okay, sure, that's weird, but okay. And then she goes to the wedding that's supposed to be happening, and everyone has turned into stone. And she's like, this isn't what I wanted. And he's like, yeah, but I stopped the wedding. And eventually it's like, yes, but now Luke is stone, so I can't have him, so what's the point? And then there's like this poison chalice or something. I think it's like, no matter what, I think someone has to be stone. So she's like, okay, well, I'll take their place because I don't want them to be stoned. Because she also kind of feels guilty for doing this, especially for her stepsister and Luke as well. So she drinks the poison, and then she turns to stone. And then 6 weeks later, so we time jump 6 weeks later, and another fate has sort of saved her. The other fate's name is Poison, and he's like, oh, it's been 6 weeks, and she's like worried, oh, what if Jax comes after me for what I owe him? And Poison's like, he'll probably forget about you anyway. So it's been 6 weeks and everything has changed. So the village, town, whatever it is that she lives in, kind of sees her act as a hero savior kind of thing, because they're like, oh my god, she like sacrificed herself to be able to free these people at the wedding. And she kind of becomes like a celebrity kind of thing, and everyone wants to marry her and stuff like that. So she makes up this rumor that if she kisses anyone, they will turn to stone, just so people would leave her alone. So then she ends up doing that, and then she tries to go to her dad's shop, the oddities shop, but that's been closed down and sold, and she's really upset about that because that's like kind of the last thing that her dad sort of left to her. And like her stepmother's being really fake. It turns out that her stepmother knew about her and Luke. Oh, the other thing that happened is that her stepsister Marisol, she tried to get married to Luke again like 2 weeks after Evangeline turned to stone, but like something horrific happened to him. I can't remember what it is, but I think he was like bitten by wolves or something. And so everyone thinks that the stepsister Marisol is a cursed bride now. But then the stepmother gave Evangeline this note that Luke left for the stepsister to confirm that Luke never really loved Evangeline, but actually loved Marisol. But she still has this like hope in her, and I know that might seem like really annoying to a lot of people, like, oh, she's so naive and she believes in happily ever after and like fairy tales and things like that, but I actually find that really, really sweet. She's only 17. Like, people need to remember, like, she's really young and probably really sheltered, and sometimes I like my heroines to not be so cynical, you know, just because I'm like, well, that's no fun. Anyway, so then I'm up to the part where she's been invited by the Empress and the Princess, who are related, who are siblings, and she's been invited to have some tea with them because they want to talk to her about going to this ball up in the north. So there's this North Kingdom prince area that Evangeline's mum was originally from, and and what they do there is the prince can't become king or a ruler if he doesn't get married. So he has to sort of find a bride, and so he holds these balls to be able to find one, basically. And they're like, oh, we can't really leave our area, so you need to go, you need to be our ambassador and go. And she's like, oh, I don't know, like, I don't want to run into Jax because then I have to kind of pay my debt. But maybe it might be fun. Like, she's sort of like, every decision, like, it sounds really silly, like every decision that she makes sounds really silly, but I kind of understand it. Like, she has this like undying hope which I really, really appreciate, actually. So that's kind of where I'm up to. Basically, she wanted to bring her stepsister Marisol. So they went up there to the party, but then there's this sort of like dinner party before the actual ball that Marisol's not invited to. So it's only like specific people, and the whole time she's like worried that Jax is gonna be there, and then he turns up. And then he like her first kiss that she owes him is with Prince Apollo, and before he tells her that that's what she's gonna do, he like pricks his finger and then smears his blood on her lips. So obviously, I'm assuming because his kiss is like supposed to like kill people unless they're his true love or something, I'm assuming that because his blood is on her lips, if she kisses Prince Apollo, something might happen to him. I don't know. I don't think he's gonna die though, because I don't like, I feel like he needs to be in the book more. Also, something that's happened is she keeps saying that he looks different, like he's not as he doesn't look as human or something. And then we also find out that he had some sort of tiff with Princess Donatella. So it's Evangeline's time to see the Prince Apollo, and like Jax is there the whole time, which is really weird. And like they kissed, and then it was almost like he couldn't stop. And then like all of a sudden Jax pulls her out, and she's like, oh, what did you do? And he's like, it's not what I did, it's what you've done, and you get to do even more tomorrow, which I don't understand. I also don't understand Jax's motivation. So there was a part where Prince Apollo is like, oh, Jax has told me how you look and stuff, like you look really pretty or whatever. And that made me think like, okay, so did he know that she was gonna be at this ball thing? But then I'm like, okay, well, how long has he known? I guess there's a lot more that happened when she was a statue than what we know, but I don't know if like she will ever like find out what actually happened during those 6 weeks. And also, one thing I do really like about Evangeline as a character is she's pretty naive, and she kind of like believes in fairy tales and like true love and all that stuff, but that doesn't mean that she will just go along with a particular plan without having questions in her head. And I think that's what I really like about her, because like every time I would come across a passage and I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting, like why does Jax want that to happen, like what's his motivation? Evangeline asks the same question, which is really, really nice, because I find that with a lot of other books that I've read, you get a really naive sort of main character, and they're naive to the point where they don't ask questions, and they're kind of just like, they go along with it, which I think is silly. So I like that her as a character, even though she is supposed to be this really young, naive kind of girl who has a lot of hope in her, it doesn't mean that she doesn't think about what could happen. Like, it doesn't mean that she doesn't think about consequences, which I really appreciate. The first night of Noct Neverending, Prince Apollo is like, I know I'm supposed to at least dance with one person, so I'm gonna dance with someone, and he picks this other girl. And then right after that dance, Prince Apollo asks Evangeline to marry him, and at first she's like really excited because she's like, oh my god, I'm getting my, happily ever after kind of thing. Oh, the other thing that happened was also she notices that Jax is talking to Marisol, her stepsister. So anyway, so then she gets proposed to by Prince Apollo, and she's like all excited, and like the couple of days after that, she like moves into his castle, and he keeps giving her all these gifts and stuff like that. But she kind of notices that, okay, this is definitely because of the kiss. He's not being himself. And it's almost like he's like under a spell or something. So she goes to talk to Jax, and be like, okay, I need you to get rid of this weird spell, because I don't want to marry him. And Jax is like, well, if you don't marry him, if you reject him, he's just gonna be heartbroken, and that'll just like ruin his life. So like regardless, you're kind of just gonna ruin his life anyway. And she's like, well, I
I'm still gonna try and like cancel the wedding anyway, because I don't feel right about it. So while they're talking, they're inside this carriage, and because that's, you know, they had to kind of like meet in secret kind of thing, and then all of a sudden they like show up at someone's house, and Jax is like, I need you to give me that second kiss and kiss the old lady that lives in this castle. And she's like, why? And obviously every time she asks why, he's like, I'm not going to tell you, basically. So they go in, and at first the old lady is like angry, is like, I want you guys to leave, and we find out that she like wanted her granddaughter to marry Prince Apollo, but instead Prince Apollo is, you know, asking Evangeline to marry him. But then she like quickly kisses her, and then her demeanor just changes, and she's like all sweet and nice and whatever. And then Jax like asks the old lady to show them her vaults, and so there's like all these little secret little alleyways and little tunnels behind vanity mirrors and things like that, and they come across this, she calls it this sleeping arch. So there are these magical arches that she's kind of seen at Prince Apollo's castle when she's had the dinner and the dance and stuff, but she says that this one seems a little bit different, and when Jax kind of stands right under it or right in front of it, it's almost like something happened to him, and she notices, she says that something in his eyes changed and it looked like hope. And yeah, so again, we still don't know why Jax is looking for this thing. We don't know like why Jax wants Evangeline to marry the prince. Like, we don't really know his motive yet. The other thing though that that is sort of kind of hinted at and happening, because when they were kind of arguing, Evangeline's like, oh, I saw you talk to my stepsister, stay away from her, and Jax is like, that's funny because I was going to tell you the same thing. And Evangeline's like, I'm trying not to believe this because I don't want you to put a wedge between me and my stepsister. And Jax is like, the wedge is already there. But again, I don't know if that just means that like she is just kind of like jealous of Evangeline, like just like as a natural human, you know, reaction of being jealous, or if that means that she is doing something to sabotage Evangeline in some sort of witchy magical way. Because yeah, so
Gotcha.
Okay, so we are finding out a little bit more about what's happening in this story, and kind of what the bigger picture is of this plot. So it turns out that this archway that's been hidden is sort of was like originally from this magical royal family, like one of the first royal families back in the day, before they had like such a thing as like the North and things like that. And they were a human family, so they weren't fates, but they possessed a lot of these magical powers. So like the wife, I think, like couldn't be beaten or something, like she was a really strong warrior or something, and then the daughter had foresight, the son could like shapeshift, and it was said that when I forgot what the family name was, but it said that when they got together they can kind of like create this bigger kind of power, and they can cast like magic onto objects and like places and things like that. So I'm assuming that these arches were
were part of what they could do. And what happened to them is they were beheaded by their people, I guess, because they got a little bit too powerful. Which is what the statues that we saw in the very beginning when Evangeline and her stepsister were coming through on the ship to go into the north. She noticed these like statues, and she kind of heard about them, and back then she when she was going through that tunnel, she heard these whispers. So we learn that this particular archway can only be opened by the Fortuna matriarch, so the old lady that came in with them, that's under the kissing spell. And they go in, and it turns out it's like this whole room, kind of dungeon kind of thing, full of magical objects and things like that. So there's like cookbooks and, I don't know, like dragon eggs and things like that. So they're walking around, and Evangeline notices that Jax isn't really like, he hasn't like, it's obvious that he hasn't found whatever it is he's looking for. And then they kind of, you know, towards the end, Evangeline's like, look, Jax, why don't you just like tell me what it is exactly you're looking for, and maybe I can like help you find it. And so he's like, okay, well, can you ask the old lady, because the old lady kind of only answers to Evangeline. So because it's almost like she's under her spell, but it's almost like you can tell that she's not completely fully under her spell like a Prince Apollo. She sort of like will refuse something, like she'll be like, oh no, don't go there, like that's not, you know, like she kind of has that, but then she kind of gets, you know, under the spell again. It's almost like she's kind of in and out, I guess. So Evangeline asks her, because Jax wanted to find this lady's like stone collection or something, so Evangeline's like, oh, can you show me your collection of stones? And she's like, no, I don't have stones. And then she like, her demeanor shifts, and she basically like the spell has worn off, and she freaks out. The old lady freaks out and is like, it's you, I should have known it all along, pointing to Evangeline. It's you, I should have known it all along. And she chants this thing, and it's basically like, you will know her to be crowned in rose gold crown or something, and she will be both peasant and princess. And like, the old lady is pretty much like about to attack Evangeline, and Evangeline's like, what are you saying? And Jax is like, oh, don't worry about her, like she's just crazy. But like, you know, obviously she's kind of speaking about Evangeline, because Evangeline does have rose gold hair, which I thought in the beginning was just like this quirky thing about her hair, but I guess it's really important. And also, so that was like part of one of the weird things about Evangeline, is that she has rose gold hair. And in the very beginning, when she went into the church to make this deal with Jax notices her hair and is like, are you like, were you born in the south or were you born in the north? And she obviously didn't tell Jax that her mum is from the north. Evangeline and Apollo are now married, and as they were doing their first dance, Apollo's brother comes up to them, and Apollo thinks that he wants to start a fight or something, because apparently his brother didn't agree with the quick engagement that the two of them had, and then he like left, and after that, like, Evangeline was just like, oh, you know, like, trying to sort of diffuse the situation. And then Evangeline and the brother started dancing, and she's like, where did, like, why did you leave and where did you go? And he didn't want to say anything, but as they finished their dance, he like stole a feather from her wings. So she's like wearing these wings that were on her like wedding dress, I guess, and he like stole it. So that's, I don't understand why. Things are starting to happen a little bit more. So after they've had the dance and she spends a lot more time, you know, at her own wedding reception and things like that, she kind of keeps, you know, waiting for Apollo to fall out of love with her, because that's kind of what Jax promised. He said that after your wedding, like, he'll just fall out of love with you. And that's like my wedding gift to you, I guess. But it's not, it doesn't seem like it's happening, and Apollo's like, oh, like, let's ditch the crowd, and like, I want to spend time with my bride for the night. And obviously she's like, I don't know if I feel, you know, comfortable doing that, because you're kind of under a spell. So she's like, yeah, I'll meet you up there, and I'll be right back. And she goes to find Jax, and she does find him, and he's like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, you know, he's, you know, madly in love with you. Isn't that like a good thing? And she's like, no, I want to free him from this spell. So he pricks his finger with his blood and smears it on her lips, and he's like, once you kiss him, he'll break out of the spell. So she goes up to the tower. He's like waiting for her. And then she, you know, has a couple of sips of wine just to pluck up the courage to do this, because she knows that once he's out of the spell, he will either be really, really angry at her, and like, I don't know, call her a witch or something, or he'll be really heartbroken and really upset. And she's like, okay, I have to do this because this is the right thing to do, you know, she thinks. So she does kiss him, and then he gets this like weird look on her face, and he starts yelling, being like, what did you do, Evangeline? And then she says, I'm sorry, but then he all of a sudden collapses on the bed, and she can't find a pulse. There's a tattoo of her name on his chest, and it starts to turn blue. So she's freaking out. She's calling for help. The guards come in, and they assume that she killed him. So they tie him up. They tie her up in a chair and gag her. And then all of a sudden, Jax turns up, and he sort of like, it's almost like he can command the guards to leave, basically. And then she is like, she can't stop crying, and she hears his voice like she's done in previous times. She can kind of like hear his voice sometimes, and she hears his voice, and he's, you know, telling her that she needs to calm down, and she's actually really happy to see him, but she's obviously, she can't, you know, she doesn't listen to that voice, and she just keeps crying. And it turns out that this whole, her kissing these people to control them using Jax's blood is just, it's not even the magic. Like, he can control, like, he controlled Apollo to fall in love with her without even touching him. He just made, like, and that's the same with the Fortuna matriarch. He was the one controlling these people. It wasn't Evangeline's kiss, which is why, like, down in the dungeon, the old lady that they were trying to control, like,
the spell wore off. And Evangeline had always thought that it was because she asked a particular question, but it wasn't. It was Jax's magic. So like, the kiss isn't anything, which is really silly. It's just he said that he just did it so that if people found out about the magic, it'll go back to her because she's the one that like kissed these people, kind of thing, which is really crazy. And then the other thing that he was like asking her was like, how long have you been crying? Why is there like a puddle of your tears? Like, because she's like, oh, well, then if that's true, if you can actually just like control people, then try to control me to stop crying. And he's like, I can't, I think you're poisoned. And so apparently, yeah, there's like this fate that can like, whose tears are poison or something, and it can like kill you, which then Evangeline like remembers drinking wine that tasted kind of salty, and now she's like, oh, well, I don't know if that's what killed Apollo, but Apollo wasn't really even crying, so I'm not too sure. And then she's, you know, he tries to set her free from the chair, but she can't stop crying. And then they escape and they run. And they end up somewhere, because he's like, he covers her up, because obviously otherwise people will know that he's, you know, taking her somewhere. And this person is going to make the antidote. Some things have been revealed. Turns out that the girl that Jax asked for help and given the antidote was Lala, who we met in the very beginning. Evangeline met her, like she was one of the first girls that she talked to at the dinner thing. Turns out she's the fate called the Unwed Bride. And it was actually her tears that poisoned Evangeline, but it wasn't actually her that tried to poison and kill her and Prince Apollo. So she says that she sold a vial of her tears in the past, but she doesn't really know who it's from, which makes me think that the gossip column about the stepsister Marisol going into like a spell shop or something might actually be true, and it might actually be her that tried to poison the both of them, which is really scary. And then we also find out a little bit more about Jax and the Empress of the South, her sister, the princess, and Lala says that he was like obsessed with her or something, or she broke his heart or something. So there's still some questions. We don't really know like why Jax is wanting this whole prophecy thing to come true yet. I don't know what that has to do with maybe the princess, or like if it's like a bigger thing that he's looking for. We don't really know that yet, but all I'm suspicious of right now is Marisol. She wakes up the next day and she's kind of healed or whatever, and so she, being the naive girl that she is, she's like, oh, I'll just go back to the Wolf Hall and I'll talk to Apollo's brother and tell him the truth, that someone tried to poison both Apollo and I, and we need to find out who it is. And Jax is like, that's not gonna work, because they're just gonna blame it on you, and you know, they're gonna suspect you and they're gonna imprison you. Also, you don't know whether or not it was actually the brother who poisoned the two of you so he could get the throne, because all he needs to do now is marry someone and have a wife, and he will be king. So so they decide, Jax and Evangeline Ava decide to team up and try and find who is who's doing all this, because Jax is like, because Evangeline's like, why would I want to partner with you? Like, how do I know you're actually going to help me? And he's like, well, I'm also accused of being a murderer. And she's like, well, yeah, but you were accused of being a murderer way before Apollo died. But he convinces her that he's like, I would like to clear my name of this, because this is not my doing. And then they hear some soldiers like knocking on some doors, but then all of a sudden it's almost like they're being controlled by Jax to leave. And then Jax announces that they need to see Chaos, the king of spies and assassins. And then Lala says that he's also a vampire, which I didn't know there was going to be vampires in this book. I like, you know what I do like about Jax and Eva's partnership is that it feels more clear to me why they would want to help each other. They're not really helping each other, they're just kind of like working together, because obviously Evangeline doesn't know where to start. She's just a human. And Jax also, it's clear that Jax's motive to keep her alive is because of the prophecy. So that, the fact that that is so clear makes me really like their partnership, because it's not this like unbelievable partnership of like, well, why do you need her around, you know? Because obviously that there's going to be some sort of a connection, some sort of a, I don't know if it's going to be a romance. I'm assuming it's going to be a romance because it is a YA book. But like, I like how it's not very heavy-handed in the very beginning, and it is very obvious why he's doing this. Like, he's not doing this because he cares about her. He's obviously although, you know, who one could argue, but I think he's mostly for the plot reason. He's doing this because of the prophecy. So I'm wondering if it's gonna be like at the end, like something about Evangeline is like not a normal human, and yeah, like I don't know. Anyway, I'm also wondering what's happening with Mary Soul. Like, did she poison? Is that just what they want us to believe, that she's the one that's doing the poisoning? Because now, like, I'm trying to like remember every character that we've met, every significant character that we've met. So Lala turns out is a fate. Jax is a fate. Evangeline is prophecy. Marisol we don't know yet. The stepmother we don't know yet. The old lady, she's kind of already fulfilled her role, I think. She might come back, who knows. Luke is the other one that I'm like, are we just gonna like assume he just left? Because I don't believe that. I think there's still something there. That just reminded me of something, actually. So if all this time the kisses don't actually mean, I don't know if I've already mentioned this, but I've been thinking about it, and that like reminded me again. But if all this time the kisses that Evangeline owes him, I guess, if they don't actually control the people like Jax said that they would, if he can actually like control these people without even like Evangeline you know, kissing them. Why does he give her his blood, like little bits of his blood on her lips? Because that's curious to me, because to me that reads at, like, after reading what Lala says, to me that reads as him wanting to test whether or not his kiss will kill Evangeline. But then why would he? But that's different to his blood. I don't get it. Is there some sort of like power to his blood then, or is there, does his blood just like mean nothing? I don't know. I'm very confused. Right, so we're still curious about the stepsister thing because of the recipe book that Jax was reading turns out to be a really dangerous sort of like spell book or something, and that's exactly the same book that that Evangeline saw in Marisol's room. So anyway, they get to the vampire lair where Chaos supposedly lives in, and it turns out that Chaos is actually the soldier person that Evangeline met for the first time outside of the arch when she was going into the dinner party before the whole ball thing, which is curious because my theory was that he was working with the stepsister of some, in some way, because he sort of showed up when Evangeline was like roaming around the streets, and like when she came across that bookstore that was closed and all that, like he turned up behind her, and that was really curious. But it makes more sense now that he is a vampire, so that's a bit creepy. So they're talking to Chaos, and they're about to leave because the changelings are all really restless and they're trying to find some human blood, and apparently both Evangeline and Jax are the only human, semi-human or like close to human that are around, which news to me. I didn't know Jax would be considered as human. I understand that Chaos is a vampire, but I didn't realize that a fate like Jax would be considered human. So so yeah, and then they're about to leave, and all of a sudden Evangeline recognizes a voice, and it's Luke, who is stuck in a cage. He's basically a changeling about to be turning into a vampire, and he like is trying to tell her to open the gate for him, like set him free, and obviously Jax is like, don't do it, and he keeps talking, and he says that he was under a spell when he went to Evangeline's home and didn't find her but found Marisol. And also so the reason why he's here and trying to become a vampire is because when the second time that Marisol and Luke like decided to get married, like wanted to get married, he was attacked by a wolf, and so he had a lot of scars and stuff, and Marisol kind of was just like, oh, I don't like you anymore, you need to fix yourself. And because he said that he was under a spell, he was almost like obsessed with her, so he tried to find whatever he could to cure himself of his scars. But then when he had the vampire venom in him, he almost felt like he was himself again. Jax is I don't know, is he no longer a vampire or something? They just came out of the crypt, and then he's like, Jax is like super sleepy or something, so Evangeline's like trying to keep him awake, so then like while they, you know, search for somewhere to hide, and then they end up in like the bells that that ring for warning or whatever, showed her to where Jax lives, and while he's sleeping, she's like trying to snoop around, and she comes up with a plan to oh, so while he's sleeping, Jax is like holding a newspaper, and it's actually a newspaper to say that Marisol and Tiberius is getting married. And so in her head she's like, oh, Marisol's put a love spell on Tiberius. Is that how you pronounce his name? I don't know. But so then she's like, oh, I'll see if I can come up with an antidote, and because that'll prove whether or not Marisol is the one that murdered Apollo or something like that. So she makes this antidote, and then she like leaves Jax's place. Jax is still asleep, and she leaves the place, and she goes back to Wolf Hall, and she sees Marisol there, and Marisol's like, oh, I have to confess, like I did put a spell on Luke, but I didn't think that it would like actually work. I didn't think that that it would get this bad. It was my first time trying magic, blah blah blah. And so she confessed to like putting a love spell on Luke, and that's why Luke was marrying Marisol and not Evangeline. So then after that confession, Evangeline's like, oh yeah, I feel bad, because like, you know, she said that Marisol said that she was like jealous of Evangeline, and like she wanted someone like Luke to look at her the way Luke looked at Evangeline, so she stole Luke basically. So then after that confession, Evangeline is like, oh well, okay, well, like that's good. I feel bad, and I forgive her. So I should probably confess to my doing and what I've done. And so she confesses to Marisol about like making a deal with Jax and everything, and Marisol gets so mad and angry that she starts screaming to her guards that Evangeline is there. Oh shit. Okay, so what just happened was Tiberius came in, and Marisol is like, oh, she just confessed to murder, even though Evangeline didn't. And then Tiberius kept calling Marisol his heart, and that reminded Evangeline that that's what Apollo used to call her. So she's convinced now that Marisol actually did put a spell on Tiberius. So I don't know, so I guess that's supposed to be the truth. I don't think it stems from Marisol being evil though. I still don't think that. I think it is still like she's a villain because of her mum and because of her jealousy. And I also like that like Evangeline as a character is very, she's very like naive and a little bit gullible, and she really wants to see the best in people. And I think that that kind of puts her in really bad situations sometimes. And I don't know if it's just like the way the author has written her that is just done really well, but I used to complain about like characters being really dumb, and even though Evangeline is a little bit dumb, I kind of think it
fits her character. I think when I say that I don't usually, well, I think what a lot of people have pointed out in a lot of other books is that they don't like really dumb main characters, and I think it's because it's not that they don't like the naivety of like dumb characters, it's that it doesn't fit the character. And I think with Evangeline, it does fit her character. I think she is very naive, she has been very sheltered, and she is a kind of character that does believe in fairy tales and stories and true love and happily ever after and like love at first whatever ... So it suits her character to be a little bit more naive and a little bit gullible, I guess. Oh no, I can't. Anyway, the ending of this book is interesting, and I like it. I like how this book is so twisty, and I like how there's so many different moving parts, and I like how it all leads back to Jax, because he's not, you know, he's not like this tortured kind of heartbroken fate that Evangeline keeps trying to excuse him of being, because he's not, he's, you know, he has plans. He wants the Valerie Arch to open, and yeah, I didn't think that whole thing with Apollo would come up though, so that's it's interesting. I wonder what's gonna happen in the next book. I did think that it would be weird that Apollo just like completely died. That didn't make any sense to me, but yeah, now it makes sense that he might not actually be dead. So yeah, I really like this book. I'm like, it's been a while since I've like wanted to read a series, so I'm excited to, you know, continue on with the series and pick up the next one.